I think it's kind of weird that when Americans think about Ireland, it's like... And yeah, sure, there's still a bit of that, mostly down the country, but I'm here to talk about Dublin. I know that a nation's capital doesn't represent the country as a whole, but having grown up and lived here most of my life, yeah, for me, Dublin is Ireland and Ireland is Dublin. It is the closest thing to what I'd call normal when put up against other major European cities, as it has the most stuff available to you compared to anywhere else in the country. I was at a wedding in Wicklow last year and was able to find a total of 2 cigars in the whole town, and that was after a full hour of phoning a bunch of different places. So yeah, not to shit on the other fine counties of the Emerald Isle, but once you leave Dublin, things can get a bit barren. It's a very pretty country, it's quiet, it's relatively safe, made better by the fact that common folks aren't allowed to own guns. We've never had a mass shooting in the traditional sense of the word, though we have had violence and killings related to the IRA, a whole clusterfuck of conflict that I'm not willing to get into here. All that I'll say is that when I was growing up, it was very tiring constantly being surrounded by pro-IRA fuckheads. In my childhood, especially during my teenage years, I mostly focused on the negatives of Dublin life. As a skateboard-loving, heavy metal-playing alternative kid, there wasn't a huge amount for me here. I did have a band which played many gigs, and this is one of the few things of my youth that I really remember enjoying. There were these amateur gigs down in Bray that were organised by other teens, and they were freaking incredible. I actually don't know if there's still a gigging scene for kids in Dublin anymore. I grew up in a little port town in South County Dublin called Dún Laoghaire, and I really think this is the best place in Dublin. Getting to live on the coast surrounded by so much loveliness, I really didn't appreciate how lucky I was till many years later. The only thing that we lacked was a skate park. There was a massive boom in popularity of skateboarding with the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater in 1999, and I don't know if people really appreciate the impact that game had on my entire generation. In the year 2000, I got my first board, and by 2001, the skating population of Dún Laoghaire had become significant. On any given day, you could hit up any of the skate spots, the 3-step, the pavilion, the harbour, the yellow brick road, and you'd be pretty much guaranteed to find someone to skate with. In the last couple of years, they redeveloped what was formerly Dún Laoghaire Baths, and it looks like it could be an excellent place to skate, but unfortunately the spot is covered with debris and sand and a whole load of other shit from waves crashing over the wall. Stupid nature. We did eventually get a proper skate park built several years later, but unfortunately at that point the skating community had dwindled to almost nothing. Not far from Dún Laoghaire is Dalkey, one of the most picturesque and beautiful little towns you will ever see. I spent 4 years of my early childhood living here, and one thing that I loved doing was going up to Dalkey Hill. The surrounding area of Killiney is like our mini version of the Hollywood Hills, where the mega-rich own multi-million euro homes. I was once invited to a house party in the area, and the girl whose party it was, her parents lived in a converted castle. We went to the top of one of the turrets to watch the sunrise, and it was pretty goddamn amazing. The hill itself has this lovely mix of wilderness containing a quarry, several wooded areas, along with some breathtaking views. I really don't know why I never come up here anymore, because I always feel great every time I do. And it's not even like that it's that far away from where I live. Getting around Dublin is easy enough if you live on the coast thanks to the Dart, but it can be a bit of a pain if you live in some of the western parts of the county. Even so, I do feel grateful that we have a perfectly functional public transport system, especially when I hear about what it's like in a lot of parts of the States, where a car seems to be a necessity. It is weird that I'm closing in on 40 and I've never learned to drive, but then again, I've never needed to. One of the best bits of living in Dublin is that I got to attend Trinity College. I didn't get a good score in my Leaving Cert, the exam that we do in our final year of secondary school, but being the crafty little fox that I am, I figured out an alternative way in. At 22 years old, I was a freshman at Trinity and spent a total of 5 years studying here, ending with my postgraduate degree. I cannot tell you how blessed I felt getting to attend what is basically Hogwarts day after day, receiving a world-class education surrounded by beauty and serenity and culture. And as an Irish citizen, all of this is free of charge. One of the big upsides of being Irish is that you get 4 free years of college, though they have snuck in this student contribution thing which runs about $3,000 a year. And also, okay, my first 2 years at Trinity weren't actually free because I used up 2 of my free years elsewhere and dropped out, but even when paying, both years combined only came to $12,000, which is pretty reasonable compared to what you have to pay stateside for university education, which is insane. It was incredibly difficult for me in Trinity, especially during my first year. I started out in a college called IADT, and while I loved that place, the difference of what was expected of me in Trinity was massive. I think it was only due to the fact that I had already dropped out of college twice that kept me here. I reckon without the looming threat that this might be my last chance to receive an education, I probably would have dropped out due to the pressure of the workload. So, what is Dublin like to live in as a post-college grown-up? If you like drinking and little else, Dublin is probably the place for you. We drink a lot in this country. This is one of the massive resentments I had growing up here, the fact that everything is so alcohol-centric with very few other options for anything else. As a person who lives an alternative lifestyle, I sometimes attend a kink night called Nivnock. While I'm extremely grateful that we have this monthly event, which has been running for almost 2 decades, due to liquor licensing laws, there is a great limit to what you're actually allowed to do at the event, and it always feels a bit too PG for my liking. The population of Dublin is so unbelievably disproportionate when compared to the rest of the country. Accounting for less than 2% of the landmass of the Republic of Ireland, County Dublin, at just under 1.5 million people, contains 28% of the country's population, which is kind of nuts. During my lifetime, Dublin has always been an expensive place in which to buy property, but renting remained within the realms of what you'd call sane. While it was considered on the expensive side by world standards, it was still doable if you lived very carefully. 10 years ago, I was able to rent a small 1-bedroom apartment in Rathmines for €700 a month while working a full-time job at minimum wage. Now, I did get a good deal in this particular apartment, mostly due to the fact that it didn't have any central heating, which I will admit absolutely sucked during winter. Even so, the average price for a similar apartment would have been like €800 to €850 a month. The average price to rent an equivalent apartment now would be around €1,800, which, considering that only 10 years have passed, is fucking bonkers. Not only that, but actually getting a place has become significantly more difficult as well. Last year, after 6 weeks of looking and 80 applications, I only got 3 responses. I eventually took a room in a shared apartment in Clontarf, an area which is about a 15-minute drive from the city, for €1,100 a month. 12 years ago, when I was looking to leave my mum's place, I moved out just 5 days after I'd started looking, and I was able to afford the room I rented while on social welfare. My current room, located at the edge of Dublin's city centre, is just under €1,000 a month in a house that I share with 11 other men, and yes, that does feel just as weird as it sounds. Picture something between a bunker and an army barracks. Saying that, the guys I live with are all extremely decent people. So far there's been 0 hostility, and in 2 months not a single bit of my food has been stolen. As bizarre as my living situation sounds, I really don't have jack shit to complain about when compared to what my students tell me, frequently having to share a room with 3 or 4 other people. And you know what? I think we should have a look at some of the listings of what's available to rent in Dublin. Okay, we'll start at the lower end of the scale. If you've only got €475 to spend, you can live in this room in Cabra, just a 30-minute walk from the city centre. A decent 5 feet of floor space and a little shared desk there at the foot of your bed where you can place your laptop or an alcoholic beverage. The best bit? You get to look your roommate right in the eye as you have that well-deserved end-of-day wank. If you thought all that pesky closet and floor space was getting in your way, you can always upgrade to the prestigious Dublin 4 area with this slightly nightmarish-looking shared room for only €500 a month. If you're willing to spend a little more, you have the opportunity to live in the heart of the city. This Dublin 1 accommodation puts you close enough to your roommate to hold hands if you're feeling particularly scared on any given dark and stormy night. All this for just €630 a month. Now look, I know what you're thinking. The location's good, but you need a slightly bigger room. My friend, we've got you covered. For just €790 a month, you keep the Dublin 1 location and you get to have an extra 2 friends sleeping in close proximity to you every single night. Okay, maybe sharing with BFFs ain't your thing, so putting you a bit further out in Dublin 9, you can have your very own room with this fabulous view for the low price of just €950 a month. Or if you want to be a bit closer to town but you really miss that feeling of being in prison, this room could be yours for just €1,100 a month. I also found this one listing that reads, bedroom for 1 male, sharing with a 59-year-old Irish male, open-minded and friendly house. I have so many questions about this one. To say that we're in a housing crisis is an understatement. I worked out that between my last place in Clontarf and the place that I'm in now, at the end of 2 years in shared accommodation, I will have paid just over €25,000 in rent. The first time I said that out loud, I was like, with another $5,000, that's a down payment for a cozy 1-bedroom apartment. I do consider myself really lucky that I get to live in one of the most beautiful parts of the city, even if I have to pay a stupid amount to do so. In all honesty, though, I've never enjoyed living in Dublin. As a younger person, all I ever wanted to do was escape. It was one of my biggest fears that I would die in Ireland. Then when I lived in Tokyo, I realized that there were significantly worse places to live, and yes, when I feel up to it, I'll be doing several different videos on that whole shit show. After Tokyo didn't work out, I really wanted to move to California as I absolutely fell in love with the place when I visited. I know that vacations are not the same as day-to-day life, but it's hard to explain how good it felt to merely exist in Venice Beach. To just be part of the background. I wasn't able to work out a way to live in the States legally. I did have the option to stay for 12 months, but chose not to, as I was afraid that it would break me, being made to leave. In hindsight, I should have just gone and worked out a way to stay when I was over there. I'd still like to live there, but I don't think I'd be able to afford the cost of health insurance. Currently, I have everything I need in Ireland, any treatment or meds, free of charge. Also, you fine folks have seemed to once again receded back into that big old bizarre fever dream, so yeah. We'll see how that all works out. I'm never sure what to do with my time off here. We are still severely lacking in public amenities like skate parks, and most evenings I either just go to the gym, play video games, or work on these videos. Occasionally I go to a gig in Fibbers, one of the last bastions of live amateur heavy metal music. I really don't want to end this video on a downer, so I'll have to go back into my innocent 6-year-old self and try and come up with something good. I like the fact that there is so much green here. I like the fact that there are birds and squirrels and all those nice things that make me smile. We've got McDonald's and a Lego store and burritos and more ice cream places that I can count. Our trees are really big and happy, and we've got real nice swans, and when the British owned us, they built some swell-looking buildings. Also, we produced Colin Farrell, so I guess we must be doing something right.
Ken, I grew up in Dublin. I love Dublin. If I'd grown up on a farm and was retarded, Bruges might impress me, but I didn't, so it doesn't.